Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight you're not a cowboy, a gunslinger, or a bold frontier explorer. You're something far more common. You're a weary traveller in 1870s Kansas, dust-choked, sunburned, and just unlucky enough to stop at the wrong house at the wrong time. The trail you've been following is the Osage Trail, but you won't need to remember that. You won't be on it much longer. There's a family up ahead who offer groceries, shelter, and polite conversation. They also offer sudden disappearances, shallow graves, and a hammer to the back of the skull. Their name is Bender. You don't know that yet, but you will. Briefly. Before you step inside and make one of the worst lodging decisions in American history, do me a small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing who's tuning in from around the world. If you'd like early access to future historical nightmares, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You're already exhausted, not the kind of tired that fades after a hot meal or a few hours sleep, that would imply such things are available to you. No, this is the kind of exhaustion that lives in your spine, that grits itself between your teeth. You've been walking too long on too little, and the Kansas wind hasn't let up since the last town, which may or may not have actually counted as a town. 4 buildings, 1 man with a shovel, and a saloon that served warm vinegar in a bottle labelled whiskey. That was 2 days ago, you think, or 3. Time out here moves like syrup over cold iron. It doesn't flow, it clings. The Osage Trail stretches on in front of you, straight and brown and indifferent. It's less a road than a suggestion. Wagon ruts etched into dust that forgets them every time it rains. The landscape is both everything and nothing. Endless tall grass prairie that sways just enough to make you paranoid. You've started imagining faces in the wind-bent reeds. People watching. People following. Your brain has always been a little dramatic, but even so, the quiet out here has weight. And you, lucky you, are carrying every ounce of it alone. Your boots are blistered through. The heel of the left one flaps when you walk, making a faint, wet slapping sound that seems far too loud out here, where even your thoughts feel echoey. Your coat no longer smells like you. It smells like sweat and dried blood and something faintly metallic, probably from when that mule kicked you, just before it ran off with your pack. You told yourself you didn't need the mule, or the pack, or the last of your jerky, which had gone a bit white around the edges anyway. You lied, obviously. There are no trees, none that last more than a few feet tall anyway. Just shrubs and distant fence posts and the occasional hunched-over skeleton of a barn, picked clean by time and lightning. You pass one around midday, a charred ruin, with half a horseshoe nailed to the doorway and a child's shoe half buried in the dirt. You don't stop to wonder why no one rebuilt. You already know the answer. In Kansas, if something falls down, it stays down. Same goes for people. You haven't seen another traveller in almost 2 days. The last one didn't speak English, or maybe just didn't like you, which is fair. You're not very likeable right now. Sunburned, cracked-lipped and twitchy from sleep that never comes easy on the ground. You muttered something about Topeka, and he grunted and rode off without a word. His horse kicked up a curtain of dust as it went. You were still coughing 15 minutes later. You hope he made it wherever he was going. You really do, because out here, people vanish, quietly, without fuss. 1 minute you're heading west, and the next, someone's using your bones to prop up a fence. The sun is too high now, mean and white and joyless. It doesn't warm you so much as it presses down on you, searing your scalp through your hat and baking your shoulders through the thin, greasy fabric of your shirt. There's a soreness in your lower back that started 3 miles ago and has only grown. A dull throb that feels like it might be the start of something more sinister, or maybe just another gift from the endless, hateful road. You keep walking because what else is there to do? No one is coming. No one ever is. That's the secret out here. The one no one tells you before you set out with your hopeful eyes and your terrible boots. You are entirely on your own. Even the sky seems uninterested. It's vast, yes, but empty. A cold blue slab overhead, with no clouds and no promises. It watches you the way a butcher watches livestock. Detached, efficient, quietly resigned. By the time you reach the small rise in the trail, your legs are shaking. Not from effort exactly, more from the sheer, mindless repetition of putting one foot in front of the other. You crest the hills slowly, half expecting nothing. And for a moment, that's exactly what you see. Just more prairie, more road, more horizon pretending to be an answer. But then there it is. A house. It's not impressive. A squat, square thing with weathered boards and a slumped roof, perched beside a barn that leans so hard to one side it looks drunk. There's a rough fence enclosing what might have once been a garden and now appears to be a collection of stubborn weeds. An orchard stands behind the house, gnarled trees spaced too closely, as if they're huddling against something. There's a hand-painted sign near the road, nailed crooked to a post. It says groceries. The letters are uneven and faint, as if someone painted them while watching the road too carefully. You stop not because you want to, you've long since stopped wanting anything, but because your body gives you no other choice. Your knees threaten to buckle, your mouth is dry enough to crack. Your stomach has entered the stage of hunger, where it no longer growls, it simply broods. And the smell, you catch it on the breeze now. Wood smoke, something sweet, maybe apples, maybe stew, or maybe your mind is offering you hallucinations to take the edge off what comes next. You know better than to trust anything that looks welcoming out here. You've heard the stories, everyone has. Homesteads where travellers vanish, outlaws disguised as shopkeepers, towns that aren't really towns, just traps with porches. But you also know something else. You are out of options. If you keep walking, you'll collapse by dusk and freeze by midnight. If you stop here, well, it might be a mistake, but at least it's a new one. So you shift your pack, or what's left of it, and start walking down toward the house. The wind rises slightly behind you, stirring up dust. It howls just enough to remind you you're being watched. Whether by God, fate, or something worse, you can't say. A figure moves in the orchard, too far away to make out clearly, but definitely human. You tell yourself that's a good sign. Someone tending the trees. Nothing sinister about that. The house doesn't look up. It just sits there, mute and unbothered, as if it's been waiting. The orchard trees sway gently, leaves whispering secrets. A low creak sounds from the barn. Maybe a door swinging on a hinge, maybe not. You step off the trail and start up the path. Your legs feel heavy. The sign reads groceries, but something about the way the G curls inward makes it look like a snare. You reach the fence, the gate is open. You approach the house slowly, boots dragging in the dirt, one foot slightly heavier than the other. A dog barks once from behind the barn, sharp, low and annoyed, before going silent again. No one comes out to greet you right away, which you find both mildly disappointing and faintly reassuring. Frontier etiquette is unpredictable. Sometimes strangers offer bread and coffee. Sometimes they offer a bullet and a shallow grave. You suppose you'll find out which sort this is soon enough. The front porch is a sagging affair, the kind that tilts just enough to make you feel off balance. The boards creak under your weight as you climb the steps. There's a horseshoe nailed above the doorway, rusted, nearly black. You knock once, then again. Somewhere inside, floorboards shift. A chair scrapes. Then the door opens. The man who answers is tall but not imposing, gangly, like he was built with more limbs than he needed and no clear instructions. He has pale hair, damp at the roots, and eyes that don't quite settle on yours. His smile is too fast, like it's been waiting behind his teeth the whole time. He speaks with a German accent, soft but present, and introduces himself as John. "John Bender," he says, as though the name should mean something. He waves you inside before you can respond. His sleeve is torn at the elbow. The inside of the house is warm, which ought to be pleasant, but somehow isn't. The air is thick, not with smoke exactly, but with the scent of it, as though the walls themselves had been steeped in firewood and grease. A single oil lamp burns on the table, casting long, stretching shadows that seem more alive than they should be. You take a half step in and pause. There's a curtain strung up across the room, made of something heavy and dark. It hangs from the ceiling, swaying slightly, as though a breeze is passing through a house with no open windows. John gestures to a chair. You sit. It's uneven, and the leg nearest the curtain rocks when you shift your weight. You realise with some unease that your back is to the curtain. You also realise, with some shame, that you're too tired to care. John disappears through a side door without a word. A moment later, another man appears, shorter, older, with a thick beard and a brow like a thunderhead. He introduces himself with a grunt. This is John Senior, apparently. He doesn't speak much, just mutters something about the weather and spits into the fireplace. Then comes Elvira. She's older than the others, or at least her face makes you think so. There's a sourness to her expression that feels personal, like she smelled something she didn't like and suspects it might be you. Her eyes are sharp, cold, and distinctly unimpressed. She doesn't say your name after you offer it, just looks at you, like she already knows it and disapproves. She doesn't offer a handshake. She doesn't sit down. And finally there's Kate. She sweeps into the room like someone playing a part in a town play. All soft curls and soft smiles, and a voice pitched just a little too high. She introduces herself as a healer, a spiritualist, a medium if you can believe such things. She doesn't ask if you do, she assumes. She places a hand on your shoulder, uninvited, and tells you your aura is dim with fatigue. You nod politely. She tells you your spirit is heavy with past pain and also full of promise. You nod again. She offers you apple pie. That part is real. You eat it. You shouldn't. The crust is too thick and the apples taste faintly of soap. But you do. Because when someone in a place like this offers you pie, the smart thing is to accept. Not out of hunger, out of survival. Kate beams like she's performed a miracle. Elvira grunts. John Jr. leans against the wall and watches you eat with the wide-eyed fascination of someone who has never seen chewing before. It is, without a doubt, the most uncomfortable dessert of your life. They ask questions. Of course they do. Where you're from, where you're going, what your business is. You answer in vague terms, not because you're hiding anything, but because you've forgotten how to be specific. West, you say. Work. Just passing through. They nod at all the right moments, but their eyes never quite match their expressions. John Senior scratches something into a piece of wood with his thumbnail. Elvira folds and unfolds a dish rag. Kate talks about spirits again. None of them blink often enough. The fire pops loudly behind you. You flinch. No one else does. Eventually, John Jr. asks the question you knew was coming. Where will you sleep? You hesitate. The truth is you were planning to find a patch of grass and roll yourself in your coat like a corpse in training, but you don't say that. Before you can answer, Kate jumps in. We have room, she says brightly. A good bed, warm blankets, clean. She says the last word like it's something rare and valuable, which, out here, it probably is. You glance at Elvira. She shrugs. One night, she says, like she's already bored of you. Then gone. John Senior says nothing. He just spits into the fire again. You nod. Just one night. That's all you need. Kate smiles wider than before, which seems medically unwise. Then it's settled, she says. You'll sleep well. You'll feel better in the morning. You'll see. You murmur your thanks. It comes out hoarse. No one replies. There's a smell you notice now beneath the layers of food and smoke. Something faint but persistent. Like old blood and wet wood. It seeps up from the floorboards in the corner near the curtain. You tell yourself it's just old stew, or mould, or the dog. Anything but what it probably is. Kate claps her hands once. "I'll fetch you water for washing," she says. "You look tired." "You are. You've never been more tired in your life." You nod again. "Just one night, that's all." "You'll leave in the morning?" "Early. That's the plan." You sit at their table. It's an uneven thing, patched together from mismatched planks and stained with the sort of history that doesn't wash off. A single oil lamp swings slightly overhead, casting long greasy shadows across the surface. The curtain is directly behind your chair, thick, scratchy and dark. Maybe canvas or burlap, hanging from a bent rod, nailed into the ceiling. It's close enough that when you shift your shoulders, the fabric brushes your collar. You try not to think about what's on the other side. The meal is already half prepared. Kate flits between the small stove and the table, humming something tuneless and sweet as she ladles out stew. It smells fine. Meat and potatoes mostly. A bit of onion, a faintly gamey undertone you try not to dwell on. John Jr. lays out chipped plates and mismatched cutlery with great ceremony, as though you've been invited to dine with royalty rather than with a group of strangers who treat eye contact like a game of chicken. Elvira watches from the corner, arms folded, mouth set in a thin, irritated line, like she resents every breath you take, and most of the ones you haven't yet. John Sr. enters late. He doesn't sit right away, just stands at the edge of the room, chewing something slowly, tobacco maybe, and staring into the middle distance, like he's waiting for a train that isn't coming. When he does finally pull out a chair, it's across from you, and the scrape of the legs on the floor is louder than it should be. He mutters something in German you don't catch. No one responds. Dinner begins without fanfare. No blessing, no toast, no small talk, just spoons hitting bowls and the wet, rhythmic sound of chewing. You do your best to focus on the food. It's actually good. Suspiciously good. The potatoes are soft, the broth well seasoned, the meat tender enough to pull apart with the edge of your spoon. You try not to ask yourself what kind of meat it is. Kate had said pork, and you've decided to believe her because the alternatives are too unpleasant to entertain with a full mouth. "So," Kate says brightly, between bites, "you've been walking long." It isn't a question. You nod. She nods back, then tilts her head in that way she does, part curiosity, part performance. "I can feel it. Your aura is tired, faded at the edges, like smoke." You murmur something polite and non-committal. She beams anyway. John Jr. laughs, a short abrupt noise like someone trying out the idea of joy for the first time. He follows it with a grin that doesn't quite reach his eyes. "People come through here all the time," he says. "Always tired, always hungry, always surprised how good the food is." He chuckles again, this time a little too long. You laugh too, or at least you make a noise you hope passes for laughter. The curtain brushes your shoulder again. You don't turn around. Beneath your boots, the floor creaks. You tell yourself it's just the old boards settling. But the sound has a rhythm to it, like something moving below, something dragging. You glance down and notice faint stains along the floorboards near the base of the curtain. Reddish brown, long since dried. You tell yourself they're from spilled stew. You don't believe it, but you tell yourself anyway. Kate leans across the table and gently touches your wrist with 2 fingers. Her skin is cool. "You have very gentle energy," she says softly, as though delivering news of a terminal illness, like a sheep or a rabbit. You offer another vague smile. She seems satisfied by that. Elvira finally sits, but doesn't eat, just watches. Her hands stay folded in her lap, her eyes narrow and sharp. Occasionally, she mutters something in German to John Sr., who grunts in reply but doesn't look at her. She doesn't look at you either, not directly, but you feel her attention like a knife, pressed flat against your back, not piercing, just reminding you it's there. The curtain sways again, just slightly. There's no breeze. You glance toward it, pretending to adjust your seat, but the moment you do, John Jr. stands and walks to the stove to refill his bowl. His body blocks your view of the space behind the curtain, and when he returns, he drops a hand to your shoulder with casual force and presses you gently, but unmistakably, back into your chair. You thank him. You don't know why. Kate resumes her humming. John Sr. chews with slow mechanical precision. Elvira coughs once and spits into a tin cup. You begin to feel very, very full. More than seems reasonable given how little you remember eating. Your limbs are heavy. The stew, you think. Maybe too rich. Maybe something else. Somewhere beneath your feet, the sound returns. A faint, dragging scrape. Then a thump. Then silence. You pause, spoon halfway to your mouth, and glance at the others. No one seems to have noticed. Or perhaps they have, and they're just better at ignoring it. You glance toward the wall where a large hammer hangs. A heavy, brutal thing with a wooden handle worn smooth. It's not a tool someone uses for building. It's a weapon that's forgotten. It wasn't always one. The head is dark with something that isn't rust. You try to convince yourself it's decorative. You fail. John Jr. wipes his mouth on his sleeve and sits back in his chair with a satisfied sigh. You should stay longer, he says casually. Rest up. A few more nights, maybe. We got room. Kate claps her hands. Yes, you need time to heal, to replenish your spirit. Your energy is so fractured right now. John Sr. doesn't speak, but his chewing stops. Elvira finally looks directly at you. Her eyes are flat, measuring. You clear your throat. That's kind of you, you say, keeping your voice even. But I should be off early. Just the one night. Then I'll be on my way. You add a polite smile. It feels brittle on your face. There's a pause, long enough for discomfort to settle over the room like a second skin. Then Kate smiles again, too wide, too bright. Of course, she says sweetly. Just the one night. John Jr. nods. One night, he echoes. Elvira returns to her silence. John Sr. starts chewing again. The curtain brushes your back. Night falls slowly on the prairie, the way it always does. Not with drama, but with a kind of creeping resignation. The sun doesn't so much set as slink away, embarrassed, leaving behind a thick blue-grey quiet that settles like dust on your shoulders. The orchard outside turns to silhouettes, swaying in the wind like rows of men deciding whether or not to approach. The air smells of damp leaves and something faintly sweet, almost like cider left too long in the heat. Inside the small guest room they've given you, if it can be called that, the walls seem to lean inward slightly, as if the house has been tired for years and is only just now admitting it. You try to sleep. You really do. The bed is a crude wooden frame with a mattress stuffed full of straw and perhaps some other less wholesome contents. It crackles and shifts beneath you with every breath. The pillow smells faintly of mildew, or maybe that's just the rest of the room. You lie on your side, then your back, then your other side, each position less restful than the last. You've tucked your coat under your head and your boots beneath the cot, though you glance at them every few minutes to make sure they're still there. You don't entirely trust this place. You don't entirely trust this family. You don't entirely trust the fact that your boots haven't moved. The house makes sounds, all houses do, but this one seems particularly committed to it. Floorboards pop in places where no one is walking. The walls contract and groan as though breathing in some slow asthmatic rhythm. Somewhere in the next room, a chair drags, once then stops. You wait for footsteps to follow, but none come. The wind outside howls through the slats in the roof, like a living thing, low and drawn out, more animal than air. You pull the thin blanket up to your chin and tell yourself, out loud, that it's just an old house. The sound of your own voice startles you. The worst of it, though, is the silence beneath the noise. The way the stillness seems to press inward whenever the wind dies or the floor quiets. It's not comforting, it's anticipatory. like the hush before a cough or a gunshot or a scream. You try to dismiss it as nerves, travel fatigue, a day of hard walking followed by a meal that sat a little too heavily in your gut. But the feeling doesn't leave. It coils deeper. It nestles into the hollow beneath your ribs. You close your eyes and try not to think about the stew, or the curtain, or the way Elvira watched you as you undressed, her eyes barely visible through the crack in the doorframe before she turned away, or pretended to. You try not to think about how Kate smiled when you said you'd be leaving early, or how John Jr. had lingered in the hallway just a few seconds too long after showing you to your room, or how John Sr. had never once blinked during dinner. You try not to think about the sound you keep hearing beneath the floorboards. It's faint, barely more than a suggestion. A scrape, then nothing. A soft thump like a sack of potatoes dropped gently onto dirt. It's not consistent. It's worse than consistent. It comes irregularly, just often enough to make you wonder whether you imagined it. And then again, just often enough to confirm you didn't. You tell yourself it's the house settling. You tell yourself it's rodents. You tell yourself it's the wind. You repeat these things with the dull fervour of a man trying not to believe his own instincts. Time passes strangely. You drift in and out of a half-sleep that leaves you more tired each time you wake. The oil lamp in the hallway was snuffed out hours ago, and now the only light is from the moon, filtered through the warped glass of the window and the grimy lace curtain someone hung to pretend this place is civilized. You stare at the ceiling and count the knots in the wood. You make it to 37 before losing track. Eventually, your body demands what your mind has been trying to ignore: nature's call, made urgent by nerves and the faintly salty stew from earlier. You sit up slowly, every joint cracking like it's been rusted in place. The cold hits you first, not sharp, but steady, a creeping kind that slides beneath your clothes and settles in your bones. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and reach for your boots. One of them has been moved, not far, just slightly, an inch, maybe two. Not enough to scream about, not enough to be sure, but enough. You hesitate, hand frozen mid-reach, then slowly pick it up and inspect the inside. Nothing there. No spider, no scorpion, no neatly folded note that says run, just worn leather and the faint smell of feet and smoke. You put them on quickly and glance at the door. It's closed. You don't remember closing it. The chamber pot is in the corner, which is good because you're not sure you want to step out into the hallway right now. You shift towards it, careful not to make noise, though you're not sure why. You feel watched, but not by eyes you can name. The room feels smaller than it did earlier, like the walls have taken a step inward while you weren't looking. You pause mid-motion when you hear it again. Below the floor, not loud, not sudden, just movement, a soft slide of something over earth, the tiniest crunch of dried straw. Then a long pause, then a sharper sound, the scrape of wood against wood, like a board being nudged from beneath. You hold your breath and wait for it to repeat. It doesn't. You tell yourself again that it's nothing. You've told yourself that a lot tonight. You wonder how long before it stops working. You finish your business as quickly as you can, your hands shaking slightly as you fumble with your belt. You try not to look at the floor. The floor tries very hard to look innocent. You cross back to the bed and sit on the edge, staring down at the boards beneath your feet. One of them has a darker stain than the others. You wonder if it's shadow or something else. You listen again. Nothing now, just the wind outside and the occasional groan of old timber. But the silence beneath it, that anticipatory hush, is still there. You try to lie back down, but your body won't relax. Your muscles are clenched in ways you didn't think possible. You feel like you've been listening to a sermon no one is preaching, but that somehow condemns you all the same. Eventually you rise, just to look, just to make sure. And as your boot steps lightly across the creaking floor, the sound below comes again. Something moves. Not the building, not the wind. Something beneath you, Morning arrives. You're still alive, technically. You'd feel more triumphant about that if your heart weren't still thudding from whatever you heard beneath the floorboards last night. But the sun is up, a wan, pale thing slanting in through the window, like it's embarrassed to be seen. And you have not, to your knowledge, been bludgeoned in your sleep. So that's something. You sit up slowly, your back aches, your mouth tastes like rust and something medicinal. For a brief, hopeful moment, you think perhaps it was all just a nightmare. The stew, the curtain, the sounds below, the way the air in this place seems to shift around you like it's breathing. But then you look down and see your boots are gone. Not far, just gone. Not beside the bed where you left them. Not beneath the cot. You check 3 times, lifting the blanket, crouching to look under the splintered frame, even pushing the straw mattress aside in case one somehow slid underneath. But no, they're simply not where they should be. You're already pulling on your coat and preparing to walk out in your socks when there's a knock at the door. Kate doesn't wait for you to answer. She sweeps in with a pitcher of water and a towel, smiling like nothing is strange about anything that's happened. "Good morning," she sings. "You looked so peaceful I didn't want to wake you. I moved your boots to the porch. They were a bit damp, and I didn't want them to mildew." You nod slowly, pretending that this is reasonable, that any of this is reasonable. "Thanks," you manage, your voice hoarse from sleep, or maybe fear. You follow her to the porch door, expecting to see your boots neatly placed just outside, but of course they aren't. She frowns, tilts her head like a confused puppy, and says, "Well, that's odd. I was sure I left them there. Maybe Elvira moved them." You do not find this comforting. Breakfast is already waiting in the main room. A thick, greasy stew slouches in a cracked ceramic bowl at your usual seat. Kate insists you eat. Elvira stands in the corner with her arms folded, scowling at the wall as though it said something rude. John Jr. waves you in and gestures to the seat, the same one as last night, the one with the curtain behind it, and you make a show of walking around the table first, looking casual, like you're stretching your legs, but really just making sure no one's behind it. The curtain doesn't move. It still hangs there, heavy and stained, and you still hate it. You sit. The chair creaks in protest, the same way it did before. The smell of the stew is different today, sharper, almost sour, with an edge of something metallic beneath the fat. You take a bite out of politeness and immediately regret it. The meat is chewy in the way that makes your brain ask questions. Your mouth doesn't want to answer. You chew for longer than you should. You swallow it like a punishment. Kate watches you with too much interest. John Sr. enters last. He doesn't speak. He rarely does. He sits across from you and starts eating without so much as a glance. He chews slowly, methodically, like it's not breakfast so much as a chore. Elvira slaps a ladle of stew into her own bowl and sits beside him. Her spoon never clinks against the ceramic. You don't know how she manages that. You mention your boots again casually. Kate shrugs. "I'm sure they'll turn up," she says, stirring her stew with the focus of a woman hiding a lie in it. "This old house swallows things sometimes." She giggles. Elvira doesn't. After the meal, or the portion of it you manage to stomach, you excuse yourself to get some air. No one tries to stop you. That's what makes it worse. Kate waves cheerfully. Elvira ignores you, and John Jr. mutters something about watching your step. You step outside into the daylight and immediately feel a kind of relief that borders on nausea. The sky's low and grey, but it's open, and right now open feels safer than walls. You wander toward the barn, your socked feet crunching across the patchy earth. The ground is still cold from the night. The trees in the orchard sway softly, as if whispering to each other. There's a faint buzzing in the air, the sound of flies, a lot of them. More than you've seen anywhere since you started west. At first you assume it's the compost heap, or maybe a dead animal somewhere nearby. Then you notice the patches of soil, dozens of them, uneven, freshly disturbed in that way Earth never is without help. Not tilled, not planted, just turned, mounded. Some are longer than others, as some are very short. You freeze halfway between the barn and the orchard and count them. You get to 17 before stopping. There are more beyond the trees, half hidden by overgrowth. You swallow hard, suddenly very aware that you're unarmed, unshod, and a guest in a house that doesn't understand the meaning of the word temporary. You glance toward the barn. Its doors are closed, but the latch hangs loosely, as if it was recently used. The flies are thicker here. You feel one brush your cheek and swat it away with more force than necessary. There's a sour smell coming from the far end of the barn, meat gone off, mixed with something sharper, something human. You don't open the door, you don't need to. Your imagination fills in the blanks far too vividly. The wind shifts. Behind you, the house stands still and silent. No laughter, no footsteps, no Kate calling your name in her sing-song voice. You look back at the door. It's closed now. You don't remember hearing it close. Your boots are sitting on the porch. You walk toward them slowly, every nerve in your body screaming that this is not a victory, that someone put them there for you to find, that someone wanted you to feel safe enough to stay just a little longer. You reach them, crouch down, and check the insides. The leather is damp but not soaked. There's a smudge of something dark on one heel. You scrape it off with a twig. It flakes like dried blood. You don't go back inside. You sit on the edge of the porch and pull your boots on, heart thudding with each tug of the laces. Your fingers tremble. You tell yourself it's from the cold. You make up your mind to leave. You tell yourself you'll just be a minute. Just need to gather your things, say a few polite goodbyes, and get back on the trail before anyone has the chance to offer you another helping of whatever's bubbling in that pot. The sky is still overcast, the wind has gone still, and the orchard behind you rustles with a quiet that feels altogether too expectant. As you walk up the porch steps, you glance at your boots again, as if expecting them to vanish now that you've committed to using them. They don't. That, at least, is something. The door opens before you can knock. Of course it does. Kate stands there, her smile already in place, like it never went away. "There you are," she says, as if you've merely returned from a pleasant walk and not from inspecting the disturbed earth that likely holds more secrets than soil. "We were just setting the table again. Thought you might like a bite before you go. You can't travel on an empty stomach." You hesitate. You do everything short of planting your feet and bracing for impact. "That's kind," you say, "but I really should—" "Nonsense," Kate interrupts, still smiling. "You're our guest. Just a few minutes more. No one should be in such a hurry all the time. It's not good for the soul." Before you can protest, she steps aside, arms sweeping toward the main room, like an actress welcoming someone into a parlour. You glance behind her, half expecting to see Elvira waiting with a frying pan, or John Jr. brandishing that hammer from the wall. Instead, you see the table, already set, stew ladled out, bread stacked neatly, the curtain still hanging in its usual place behind the chair that naturally is meant for you. Your mouth is dry. You hear your own heart beat in your ears. Still, you step inside. You don't want to. Every part of your body screams at you not to. But politeness is a powerful thing, especially when sharpened to a fine point. And this place is built on it, drenched in it. The kind of politeness that smells like meat gone off and smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. You cross the threshold and feel the door close behind you. "John's already poured you coffee," Kate chirps. You glance at the mug. It's steaming, dark, and smells wrong. Burnt, maybe. Or medicinal. John Jr. sits across from your chair again, his grin the same as before. Too bright, too proud, too fixed. Elvira is already seated, knife and spoon in hand, looking at you like you've done something to offend her, simply by re-entering the room. John Sr. stands near the far wall, blocking the space between you and the door. Your pack is resting near your chair. You hadn't left it there. You know you hadn't. But there it is, uppropped neatly on the floorboards beside your seat, like a dog waiting for a command. You consider grabbing it and running, just lunging for the pack and barreling through the front door. But John Sr. is still there, and he hasn't moved. Not a muscle. His eyes are locked on you, empty of welcome. Kate clears her throat gently. Go on then. Sit. You'll feel better once you eat. Always do. You step forward. Your hand brushes the back of the chair. As you pull it out, the curtain sways behind you. You try to ignore it. You sit. The stew is thicker this time, darker, almost grey at the edges, with a layer of grease floating across the top, like skin on old milk. The bread is dense, the crust chipped at the corner, as if someone had already taken a bite and thought better of it. You pick up your spoon. You need to make a decision. Kate sits across from you, hands folded beneath her chin, like she's posing for a daguerreotype. You know, she says softly, most travellers stay longer. Once they've had time to rest. They don't always mean to, but the trail can wait. I appreciate the hospitality, you reply, but I've got someone expecting me further west. Elvira snorts. It's not a friendly sound. John Jr. laughs. He always does. John Sr. doesn't move. He hasn't blinked since you sat down. You lift the spoon to your mouth and sip the smallest amount of broth you can manage, without being rude. It tastes familiar. Not good, not rotten either, just wrong. A flavour you can't name that clings to the roof of your mouth and sinks between your teeth. You swallow anyway. Kate takes a slow breath. You should listen to your body, she says. It's trying to tell you something. I have, you say, careful to keep your voice light. That's why I know it's time to move on. John Jr. drums his fingers on the table and taps the handle of his spoon against the rim of his bowl. It makes a low, hollow sound that rings longer than it should. You glance at him. His grin is still there, but now it feels like it's just been drawn on with chalk. Kate leans closer. But surely you can stay for just one more meal, she says. It would be rude otherwise. We've gone through all the trouble. You glance around. John Sr. is still blocking the door. Elvira is still watching you, motionless. The house is silent, except for the sound of your own breathing and the faint buzz of a fly somewhere near the curtain. You take another bite. You don't want to. You don't even taste it. You chew out of habit, out of fear, out of sheer exhausted compliance. The bread cuts the inside of your mouth a little. You welcome the sting. It feels real at least. We've had many guests, Kate says. Most don't leave right away. Some don't leave at all. Her smile doesn't change. Her voice doesn't even lower. She says it like someone commenting on the weather. I'll be sure to sing your praises on the trail, you murmur. John Jr. laughs again. This time, no one joins him. Kate raises her mug. To the road, she says. You raise yours. To the road. You drink. You smile. You pretend the room isn't closing in. You take one last bite. You feel it before you hear it. A shift in the air. A pressure at your back. Like the room has leaned forward to whisper something it shouldn't. The curtain behind you, already too close, stirs again. But this time, it doesn't brush you gently. It moves with purpose. It swells, however slightly, with the weight of something that isn't fabric. You stop chewing. You don't speak. No one at the table seems to notice. Or maybe they do, and they've simply decided to wait. Kate sips her coffee with the delicate precision of someone who has never once tasted her own food. Elvira stares at the grain of the table. John Jr. hums softly, a wandering little melody with no tune and no end. And John Sr. remains by the door, silent, still, as though rooted to the floor. You look at him, willing him to make eye contact, to give you a signal, to blink. He doesn't. There's another sound behind you, a soft thud like a boot heel shifting on wood. You feel the hair on your arms rise. You force yourself to stay still, to breathe evenly, to pretend you haven't noticed anything at all. You think about standing, but you don't. You think about running, but your legs won't obey. Kate sets her mug down gently. You seem tense, she says, voice light and almost sweet. I suppose I am, you reply, trying to keep your tone calm. Long road ahead. She smiles. Oh, I don't think so. You don't look at her. You can't. because something is behind you now. Not maybe, not possibly. Something. A person. Standing close. Close enough to strike. The curtain twitches again. Not from wind, not from movement in the room, but from the simple act of being brushed aside. You hear the faint scrape of fabric against fabric. And then a breath, not yours. You try to turn. You don't make it. The blow lands hard and fast, low at the base of your skull. The sound it makes isn't loud, just a dull, wet crack that rings inside your head like a bell you'll never stop hearing. Your vision doesn't go dark right away. That would be a mercy. No, it shatters. The world tips sideways. The floor surges up at an angle that makes no sense. Your arms twitch toward the table. Knock over the mug. Send the coffee splashing in a lazy arc you barely register. The pain is delayed. A thudding echo that bounces behind your eyes like someone striking a barrel with a stone. You try to say something, maybe help, or stop, or just your own name, as if that will matter. But your mouth doesn't move right. Your jaw is loose, slack, wet. You hit the floor sideways, shoulder first. The impact jars your ribs and forces a pathetic grunt from your chest. The air smells of stew and sweat and dirt. Someone laughs, short and amused, and then the curtain falls back into place behind you. You don't see who struck you. You won't get the chance. You lie there twitching, blinking rapidly, trying to stay conscious, trying to crawl with fingers that no longer know how to grip. The voices around you are hushed now, deliberate, like they've done this before. You hear footsteps, Ryan, more than one set, and then a creaking sound directly beneath your ribs. The floor moves. It doesn't open with drama. There's no trapdoor springing wide, no mechanical contraption revealed with a flourish. It simply lifts. A square of floorboards, pried loose with a crowbar or strong fingers, hinged back just far enough to expose a square of darkness beneath you. A smell rises from the hole. Earth, rot, something old and iron-rich. Your nose twitches involuntarily. Hands grab you. Rough, quick, impersonal. You're not a person to them anymore. Just a task. A sack to be moved. You try to struggle, but your arms flap uselessly, like you've forgotten how elbows are meant to function. You hear Kate murmur something soft, almost fond. Then you're dragged, knees scraping the floor, head lolling, blood dripping from your scalp in hot, rhythmic pulses, toward the hole. You want to scream. You do. But the sound catches somewhere in your throat, drowned by the rising rush in your ears. You manage a gurgle. It goes unnoticed. They don't throw you down. They lower you slowly, efficiently, with a kind of awful care. Your back slides against the edge of the trapdoor. You feel every splinter, then dirt, damp and cold. The moment you touch it, the heat from your body begins to vanish, like the earth is drinking it in. You land in a slump, your cheek pressed against something soft and unidentifiable. Above you, someone closes the trapdoor. It doesn't slam, it settles, with the same quiet finality as a coffin lid. Darkness closes in. Your breath comes in short, panicked bursts. Your ribs hitch, your limbs twitch. You try to move, to sit up, to crawl, but your body refuses. It's not just pain anymore, it's failure. Muscle and nerve refusing to cooperate. The back of your head pulses with each heartbeat. The pain growing fuzzier, distant, and far too slow. You hear them walking above you. Faint, muffled thuds on the wood. A dragging sound. A chair scraping. Laughter again. Something heavy being lifted. The voices fade. You are not the centre of their attention anymore. You've been dealt with. You lie in the pit, bleeding and broken and half forgotten already. The earth beneath you is cold, but it isn't empty. Something shifts nearby. A hand maybe, a foot, a face too still to be living. You can't tell, you don't want to know. The smell is unbearable. Soil soaked in old blood. Rot so deep it's turned sour. You gag. Nothing comes up. Your stomach is too empty. The nausea stays. Eventually, you lose consciousness. You wake up sometime later, still underground. It's not the sort of waking that brings clarity. There's no sharp intake of breath, no sudden rush of memory or motion. Just a slow, wet crawl back toward awareness. Your skull throbs like it's grown its own heartbeat, each pulse sending a dull wave of heat through your jaw and into your spine. You try to open your eyes, but the darkness doesn't change. You try to move, but nothing responds the way it should. You are not in control anymore. You are not in your body anymore. You're simply stuck inside it. The air is thick, not just humid, but soupy, heavy with rot, old iron, and something else, something sickly, sweet and wrong. It settles in your lungs like mould, coats your tongue until you can taste it even without breathing. You gag, and the movement jolts your ribs, which protest with a sharp blooming ache that tells you something inside may no longer be in one piece. You roll slightly, or think you do, and your fingers brush something beside you. Not cloth, not dirt, something softer, rounded, a jawbone maybe, or the curve of a shoulder. It doesn't move. You freeze, listen. The space around you is still, but not silent. There's a low shifting sound nearby, not speech, not breath, more like the quiet settling of something that used to be alive and has long since accepted otherwise. You breathe shallowly, terrified that if you inhale too deeply, you'll taste whatever's left of the others. Because you know now, without question, that you're not alone down here. The pit is narrow, barely wider than your outstretched arms, and the walls slope inward like they're trying to crush you into a smaller, more manageable shape. The ground is soft in the worst way, uneven, sticky in patches, gritty in others. There's straw here and there, or what might have once been straw, matted with fluids that smell like they've had time to stew. Your back sticks to it when you shift. The pain from your head intensifies, spreading behind your eyes like smoke in a locked room. You fade again, not into sleep, but into something murkier. Your mind lets go of the moment for a while. Time slides past you like mud. When you surface again, you hear voices. They're above you, muffled by the floorboards, but unmistakable. You can't make out everything, but you know who they belong to. Kate is speaking, her voice high and lilting, carrying the same cheer it did when she offered you pie and praised your aura. She says something about light being released, something about passing peacefully. She sounds like a Sunday preacher who knows she's lying and doesn't care. Elvira replies with a low grunt, sharp and humorless. Something about soft meat, something about waste. You lie still and listen. You don't want to hear more, but your ears keep working. Your body may be broken, but it hasn't shut down completely. Not yet. Another sound follows, metallic, scraping against wood. You recognize it after a moment. The hammer, not swinging, just being moved, handled, placed with care. Maybe it's being cleaned. You close your eyes against the dark, which makes no sense, and press your forehead into the filth of the floor. The smell is stronger there, more concentrated, like the ground is breathing up into your mouth. You swallow bile. You wonder how many came before you, how many fell through this same trap door, landed in this same place, saw the same crooked outline of wood, slowly closing overhead. You wonder how many were buried, and how many were just left here to become part of the smell. You don't want to be part of the smell. You don't want to become texture beneath someone else's boots. You shift again, trying to sit up, but your limbs betray you. Your legs tangle, knees scraping against something rough. Your hand lands on cloth, but it's not yours. A sleeve, maybe. A shirt. Still on someone. You pull your hand back quickly and hold it against your chest like it's been burned. You can't see the other body. That's almost worse than seeing it. The voices above grow louder. Kate is laughing. Elvira snaps something in German. John Jr. hums the same off-key tune he always does. You hear boots pacing, a chair being dragged, the sound of something heavy being moved, not carried but pushed, another chair maybe, another body. They don't talk about you. They're done with you. You're no longer their concern. That should be comforting, but it isn't, because it means you're already part of the routine. You wonder if they'll come back to finish the job, if maybe they just didn't hit hard enough the first time, if they'll realise you're still alive and do something about it. Part of you hopes they do. Not because you want to die exactly, but because this isn't living. This is waiting. And you've never been good at waiting. You fade again, this time longer. You dream of walking the trail again, of the wind in your ears and the mule that left you. You dream of stew that doesn't taste like regret, and pie that doesn't arrive with a smile too wide. You dream of boots that stay where you left them. You wake one last time to a creak above, a soft one, careful, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping dog. The trapdoor lifts. You don't have the strength to react. You open your eyes, just barely, and see a shape framed in shadow. John Sr. maybe, or John Jr. It hardly matters. A voice mutters something, irritated, maybe disappointed. Still breathing, it says, flat and unsurprised. Then comes the scrape of metal, a shift in weight. The hammer arcs down once more, this time without ceremony, without hesitation, without need. It lands with a dull final thud. No shouting, no goodbye, just a correction, a clean-up, a routine. Somewhere a week or so from now, though time means very little in Kansas, someone notices you haven't arrived. Not someone particularly close to you, not family, not anyone who knows what your voice sounds like when you're tired or which shoulder you favour when you walk. Just a man you shared a drink with in Dodge. A merchant maybe, or a drifter like you, who happened to say, "See you in Cherryvale," and now feels the faintest sting of surprise when you don't show. He waits a few days. Maybe you're slow. Maybe your mule quit on you again. Maybe you took a detour or changed your mind. He doesn't worry exactly. Just wonders. He tells a bartender. The bartender tells someone else. Eventually, the story takes the long way down the trail, passed from mouth to mouth, like a lukewarm secret. One of those tales just strange enough to be ignored. Heard a fella went missing, someone mutters around a campfire. Supposed to be here Tuesday, never made it. Got drunk and wandered off, most likely, someone else replies. Maybe. You're not the first person to disappear. You're not the second. There have been whispers for months now, maybe longer. A missing trader, a family that never reached their claim. A man who left Independence with a full wagon and never sent word again. Always along this stretch. Always past that old orchard. Always near that little shack with the word groceries fading on the fence. But Kansas is not the sort of place where whispers turn into actions. Not quickly, anyway. The law doesn't travel well out here. Sheriffs are rare. Marshals are busier elsewhere. And the space between towns is full of ghosts already. Men vanish for all sorts of reasons. Theft, cold, Indians, starvation, misjudged rivers and bad whiskey. No one needs help disappearing in Kansas. The land does most of the work. Still, something doesn't sit right. A few riders make a half-hearted pass along the trail. They stop at a creek. They check a few known bends in the road. One even goes as far as the edge of the Bender property, but doesn't cross the gate. The orchard is quiet. The house looks normal. A woman is hanging laundry out back. A girl with long hair waves from the porch. The traveller tips his hat. He doesn't stop. He doesn't mention the shovel in the dirt or the way the wind dies down as he rides past. The Benders smile. They always do. In town, people talk, low and quick, always ending with a shrug. It's a grim kind of ritual, practiced and half-hearted. No one wants to be the one to ask real questions. Not here. Not when everyone's got a cousin who vanished or a friend who never returned. You start tugging on the thread, and the whole prairie might unravel. Besides, the Benders are polite. That matters more than it should. John Sr. is quiet, yes, but steady. Doesn't drink. Doesn't cause trouble. Works hard and pays in coin. Elvira's sharp-tongued, but not unusual for her age. Kate is sweet, strange, harmless. Always talking about spirits and healing, offering to speak with the dead, if you believe in that sort of thing. John Jr. is cheerful enough, loud, but that's forgivable. He's just foreign. That's what people say. And they run a good operation, a little shop, some groceries, a way station if you're passing through, a hot meal and a cot if you need it. They never charge too much. They're generous with travellers. Kate always asks after your well-being. "How are your humours?" she says, like she means it. They keep to themselves. But they're helpful too. So when someone suggests maybe the Benders know something, just a hint, just a question, it's easy to wave away. No, not them. They're odd, sure, but they're not killers. Besides, they've been here for years. As if time is a sign of innocence. As if evil needs an invitation. Another week passes, then another. The whisper thickens into something darker. People begin remembering things they didn't think were important at the time. A man who left their place and was never seen again. A traveller who claimed he saw something strange in the barn. Something large buried under canvas. A woman who thought she heard screaming late at night, but convinced herself it was wind and coyotes. No one said anything, because no one wanted to be rude, and now no one wants to be wrong. Eventually, someone does ride out. An official, maybe a sheriff's deputy, maybe a volunteer, maybe just someone with too much time and too many regrets. He carries a list of names and a pistol that hasn't been cleaned in a while. He means to ask a few questions, nothing serious, just a little chat. He gets as far as the orchard. John Jr. meets him near the fence, smiling too much, teeth just slightly stained from tobacco or something worse. "Can I help you?" he says, polite as ever. The rider says he's looking for someone. "Lots of people come through here," John says. "Hard to keep track." The rider nods, looks past him, sees the house, the curtain in the window, the trail of churned up soil behind the barn, the trees. Kate steps out onto the porch, her face warm, open, inviting. She waves. The rider tips his hat. "Sorry to trouble you," he says. "No trouble at all," John replies. The man turns back toward town. He doesn't look over his shoulder. The Benders smile and wave until he's gone. Your body is still beneath the floor. You are still waiting to be missed. Months pass, maybe more. It's hard to say exactly how long. Kansas doesn't measure time like the rest of the world. It doesn't tick, it settles. Seasons change, but they do it grudgingly. Summer dragging its feet. Winter arriving with too much wind and too little snow. The road outside the Bender place keeps on collecting footprints, wagon tracks, hoof prints, none of which lead to you. People pass by. Some of them glance at the house. Some even wave. A few stop. None stay long. Not anymore. The rumours don't go away. They grow roots. Someone finally starts keeping a list of names, of dates, of people expected and never seen again. A pattern emerges. Too many disappearances. Too many travellers unaccounted for. And always the same stretch of trail. The same bend in the path. The same damn orchard, green and humming with flies, pretending to be harmless. It's a group of men from the nearest town who eventually decide to stop talking and start digging. The sheriff is there, or what passes for one in a place like this. A few ranchers, a judge's cousin. No one carries a badge worth mentioning, but they all carry shovels. Some bring pistols. They're not looking for answers exactly. They just want to stop the whispers, or prove them true. Either will do. By the time they arrive, the Benders are gone. The house stands, quiet and undisturbed. The front door is unlocked. The table still has plates on it, dusty, untouched. The curtain hangs limp behind the chair, stained the same way it's always been. But now, there's no one to pretend it's decorative. The cellar smells like wet earth and rust. The floorboards are scuffed in places they shouldn't be. One of the men pulls up a section of the parlour floor and finds the trap door. They lift it. The ladder is broken. The pit is real. There's no body in it. They check the barn next. It's mostly empty, except for tools that look a little too clean. A patch of floor that's been recently swept. And a faint, lingering smell that makes the younger men step outside, and vomit into the grass. A pile of canvas sacks lies in one corner. Nothing in them, not anymore. Then someone thinks to check the orchard. It's subtle at first. The soil is a little loose, a little too soft in some places. There's a strange pattern to the roots of the trees, as if they were planted around something, rather than in a natural row. One man pokes the ground with a stick and hears the sound change. Hollow. Dead. They dig. The first grave is shallow. A man face down, arms tied behind his back, skull caved in. No identification. No one recognises him. A few feet away, another. This one's smaller. A woman, perhaps. Her dress is mostly gone, eaten away by rain and time, but her boots are still laced. Her mouth is open. After that, it stops being a mystery. It becomes arithmetic. They stop counting at 10, then 15, then 20. Some are headless, some have been dismembered, some look like they were buried in a rush, others placed with the kind of care that makes things worse, not better. One has a folded scrap of paper in his coat pocket, a letter addressed to no one. Another has a broken comb still tangled in what's left of her hair. The orchard doesn't run out of bones. It just stops offering them once the men are too tired to keep digging. The cellar yields nothing else, just dirt and the vague shape of the pit. The floorboards show signs of regular use, the wood beneath the table worn thin, the nails around the trap door re-hammered too many times. Someone finds the hammer hanging on a peg by the stove. It's wiped clean, but no one believes it. They find a blood-stained bonnet behind the curtain. They don't find the benders. The house is stripped of valuables, but nothing else. Beds still made, crockery still stacked, Kate's spiritual pamphlets still in a pile by the stove, half read, half burned. There's no sign of a struggle, no indication of departure, just absence. They left the way smoke leaves a chimney, silently, completely, without apology. The benders are never caught. Not properly, not officially, not in a way that satisfies anyone hoping for answers. They disappear into the very same Kansas wind that once covered their crimes, the same wind that dried the blood on their floorboards and swept dust into the boot tracks that led toward the pit. The house is found empty, the orchard is found full, but the people responsible, the quiet, smiling family of 4 who waved at travellers and served warm stew, are nowhere to be found. Some say they went east, others swear they headed south, across the border into Indian territory, where law gets looser and memories shorter. There are stories of a woman matching Kate's description, working as a spiritualist in Galveston, of a man resembling John Sr. seen boarding a train in Denver with a suitcase too heavy for its size. Elvira is rumoured to have died in a cabin somewhere in the Ouachitas, buried beneath a false name and a rotten porch. John Jr. might have changed his face, or maybe just his name. No one can agree. There are sightings, of course. There always are. A ranch hand in Texas claims he saw all 4 of them at once, passing through in a rickety wagon with a busted wheel. A woman in Missouri says she spoke to Kate at a tent revival, just weeks after the bodies were found. A newspaper prints a story that John Sr. was arrested under a different name in Arkansas, but it turns out to be someone else. Another German man with too many teeth and not enough charm. None of them are confirmed. None of them lead anywhere. The law tries for a while, then stops. Kansas is big, and the world beyond it is bigger. The benders vanish not because they were clever, but because the land let them. The prairie has always swallowed what it no longer cares to carry. Back in Cherryvale, people tried to move on. The house is torn apart by scavengers, then burned down by someone who doesn't want to see it anymore. The trees in the orchard remain for a time, but no one tends them, and they rot from the inside out. The fruit turns bitter. The roots grow twisted. Kids dare each other to sneak into the grove at night, to touch the soil where the bodies were found. None of them stay long, but the stories last. At first they're practical, warnings mostly. Don't stop overnight with strangers. Don't trust quiet families with too many shovels and too few neighbours. Don't turn your back to a curtain. The kind of advice passed down with tight lips and serious eyes. The kind of advice no one really listens to until they wish they had. Then the stories change, grow teeth, become legend. They say the Benders weren't people at all, but devils in disguise. That Elvara could smell fear. That Kate wasn't just a fake medium, but the real thing. That she spoke with the dead because she made them. That the curtain was stitched from the clothes of their victims. That the stew had ingredients. The more time passes, the less the truth matters. The blood thickens in the telling. The hammer gets heavier. And then there's you. Your name never enters the papers. It's never etched into the official record. No one tracks down your family. No one sends a letter home. You're just another traveller. Another gap on the trail. But still, somehow, your story sticks. It rides along with the others. Not because of who you were, but because of what you represent. They say a man, or a woman, depending on the version, once stopped for a single night. Just one. Had dinner, slept by the fire, said thank you, smiled, tipped their hat, and vanished. No fight, no trace, just gone. Like smoke out of a chimney. Some say you lingered for days, others say you knew something was wrong and tried to leave. They tell it both ways. The fool who stayed too long, and the poor soul who saw the truth too late. It doesn't matter which version they prefer. You're the punchline either way. Your story becomes a campfire staple, told in low voices to travellers too tired to argue, to children too old to believe in monsters, but still young enough to fear the dark. A cautionary tale for anyone who thinks they're clever enough to survive the plains on their own. You are the ghost at the edge of the trail, the one who knocked on the wrong door, the one who sat with your back to the curtain and didn't get back up. They give you different names. Sometimes you're a trader, sometimes a preacher, sometimes a runaway, a school teacher, a ranch hand, a gambler. The details change, but the ending doesn't. You die, every time. Sometimes it's the stew, sometimes it's the hammer, sometimes it's a slow fade in the pit. The audience doesn't mind. They're not listening for accuracy. They're listening to be warned. Mothers invoke you when their children want to wander too far from camp. Mind your step, they say, or you'll end up like the one who stayed with the Benders. Fathers tell your story over firewood and beans, with the same dry finality they used to discuss blizzards and snakebite. Boys repeat it with embellishments. You fought back, you screamed, you left a mark, but the ending's always the same. You are not mourned, you are not avenged, but you are remembered. Sort of. Not for who you were, just for where you stopped. The house collapses eventually. Time eats wood faster than fire, if you give it enough wind and silence. One spring, a storm comes through from the northwest, and by morning the roof is gone. A season later, the front wall buckles, leaning outward like it's trying to escape its own memories. Children still sneak out there sometimes, daring each other to step inside. But eventually, there's no inside left. Just a pile of broken beams and rotting shingles, sun-bleached curtains shredded and half buried in the weeds. No one rebuilds, no one claims the land. The orchard withers slowly. Some of the trees live longer than they should, clinging to their sour fruit and warped limbs like stubborn ghosts. Others die standing, dry bark peeling away, branches sagging toward the earth as if to apologize. The grass grows tall around their roots, and eventually the trails through it disappear. Not because people stop walking them, but because the grass grows back too quickly, like it's trying to cover something. The trail itself remains. The Osage Trail was never official, never mapped properly, never fenced or signposted, but it endures anyway. People still walk it, wagons still roll over it, horses and boots and wheels keep its line faint but visible. It leads west after all, and there's always someone headed west. Dreams move in that direction, and so do the desperate, and the bored, and the unlucky. Most pass the spot without knowing what it is. a dip in the land, a darker patch of trees, a half-sunk fence post with nothing to guard. Some feel a chill, but write it off as wind. Others hear something strange, a branch snapping, a whisper through the grass, a sound like something shifting underfoot, and ride a little faster. They don't know why. They just do. But some stop. That they're not always alone. Sometimes they're part of a group and fall behind. Sometimes they're too tired to go on and think, foolishly, that a few minutes of rest won't matter. Sometimes they're looking for shelter and find nothing but ruins, no walls, no roof, just the outline of something that used to be a home, and the feeling that it's still trying to be one. And then they're gone. Not always, not often, but just enough. A traveller vanishes every few years, not many, not in groups, just one at a time. A man on foot who never reaches the next stop. A woman on horseback who sends no letters home. A teenage boy who leaves ahead of his caravan and isn't seen again. No blood, no signs of struggle, just absence. People talk, of course. They always do. Some blame coyotes, some say bandits, some mutter about sinkholes and creeks and the general cruelty of the land. But those are just the ones who need answers. The rest don't say anything. They know better. They've heard the stories. Maybe they even believe them. Some say it's ghosts, that the orchard never forgot the blood spilled beneath its roots, that the wind carries voices if you sleep too close to where the cellar once stood, that if you lie in the grass with your back to the sky, you'll hear something breathing beneath you, slow, hungry, waiting. They say Kate still walks the trees, smiling, looking for people with fractured auras, and nowhere better to be. They say you can see John Jr. if the moon is low enough, just a shadow, swaying, carrying a hammer. Others say it's not ghosts at all, that someone else took over, a copycat, a child of the Benders, or a neighbour, or just someone who decided to keep the tradition alive. They say the trail teaches people things, that if you spend enough nights out there, listening to the wind and the silence, you stop needing reasons. You just start doing, not out of madness, not even hunger, just out of habit. But most people don't say anything at all. They pass by quickly. They don't look too closely. If they see someone in the trees, they tell themselves it was just a trick of the light. If they hear footsteps that don't match their own, they keep walking. If they see a shadow in the place where a house once stood, they keep their eyes forward. There are places in Kansas where silence is safer than curiosity. The land keeps its secrets well. The grass covers the past one season at a time. The bones shift lower with every rainstorm, press deeper into the soil until even the trees forget where to grow. But the trail doesn't forget. The trail remembers everything. Every footprint, every wheel rut, every scream swallowed by wind and buried in dust. And if you stand very still on a quiet evening with no birds and no breeze, you might hear it too. Not voices, not cries, not the sound of your name being whispered through the grass. Just a low, familiar creak. A curtain moving, a floorboard settling, a hammer lifted once more. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. Slow, silent, and buried just beneath the surface. If you're still with me, thank you for walking the trail, for stopping at the wrong door, and for sitting long enough to hear the wind shift. History didn't mark their names with justice, and it didn't mark yours at all, but the ground remembers. If you'd like early access to more stories like this, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Amanda Lamke. Sleep well.